Hey there, this is author illustrator Jarrett Lerner, the creator of A Work in Progress. This video is being made to go along with the global read aloud of this book. Whether or not you're participating in the global read aloud, hopefully these videos are still beneficial to you. I think they will be. But this video is for week 5 of Global Read Aloud. And the portion of the book that covers are pages 226 to 285. And this video is not meant to provide a summary about the plot and what happens in the book, but to give you some information and insight sort of behind the scenes about the creation of the book. And I hope it makes the reading experience, whether or not you're doing it for the Global Read Aloud, more meaningful and interesting and exciting and enjoyable and sort of rich for you. So this portion of the book marks another turning point for Will. It's when Will's patterns of disordered eating, in previous videos I've talked about how this disordered eating works almost like a snowball going downhill. If you've ever seen a sort of cartoon like that, and it grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and more dangerous and scary and powerful and intense. It's where this snowball, the logical ending of what will happen. It will hit rock bottom and explode and burst, and that's sort of what happened. It's Will reaching rock bottom. It's when his disordered eating sort of flips and transforms into something much more like an eating disorder. I've explained and described disordered eating in a previous video, but just briefly, I think of and describe disordered eating as your mind preventing you from listening to your body and giving your body what it needs and what it wants. And I talked about when I gave that definition in the other video, how the better we are and the more we listen to our body, we learn that it tells us sort of exactly what it needs. When it's hungry, when it's tired, what it's hungry for, or whether what we're giving it when we're hungry is things that will make it happy for a little bit, that will give it energy, that will make it satisfied, that will do whatever, right? And disordered eating is sort of when your brain, I think, gets in the way of listening to your body, or listens to it and then decides that it's not going to be friendly to it and give it things other than it needs, or deny it what it needs. An eating disorder is something that is a medical condition and is diagnosable by a doctor. The most common, well-known ones are anorexia and bulimia. And if you want to learn more about all of this, there are some resources included at the very end of the book, at the very end of A Work in Progress. And there's more that you can find online at the library. And sort of to go along with something I said at the end of the last video, if you are interested in learning more about this stuff, just because it's interesting to you, or because you are experiencing it yourself, or you know someone in your life who you think may be experiencing, or are experiencing it, I cannot urge you strongly enough to find someone to speak to, a trusted adult, a teacher, a librarian, a principal, a counselor, your parent, a friend's parent, a coach. I hope you have someone in your life who you could ask for more information and would engage with you and help you out in that situation in a positive, helpful way. But yeah, some things to point out about this book is that it's really where the scribble knots, these things that Will keeps on sort of putting in his notebook and that sort of continue to dominate his notebook, it's where they grow and sort of get out of control. In addition, hand in hand with that is a lot of negative space. And I talked about in another video how he is not drawing as much Will, and how the negative space is sort of playing against and pulling on that the scribble knots. So it's darkness and emptiness, and it's sort of painting a certain picture of Will. We also see the inclusion here of that font of the monster voice that Will has named. And we also see, I discussed how in the last section, how Marcus's sort of monologue dominates the page when he's being open and honest and vulnerable. And we get sort of an echo of that here. And it's Will's internal monologue, but it is much darker and dangerous and severe and unhealthy. And then Will's language sort of fragments. And this last poem of him in the hallway, he's sort of kept himself from eating. He doesn't have much energy. He can't think straight. Things are getting vaguer. Reality, which has sort of drifted away from him as he gets more consumed with his own sort of mental world and antagonistic mental life. Reality gets further and further from him and harder for you as the reader to get a grip on. And then he finally sort of hits rock bottom. It was really important to me, as I began to discuss in another video, to show this sort of development, this progress, this descent, you could almost call it, from all the way back at the beginning, from an inciting moment, having someone do something to you to sort of create or implant the first germ of an insecurity. It was important to me to show how one word thrown at someone in a hallway, in passing, and the person throwing the word never thinks about it again, but it will land in sort of the receiver of that word, the victim of it. It will sort of plant themselves in their heads, their hearts, their bodies, and grow and grow and grow and grow. And that moment, that one insecurity, builds to become this disordered eating, and then sort of gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and then we reach a full-fledged eating disorder. I mentioned this a bit in a previous video, so I won't harp on it for too long, but growing up, I had never heard of disordered eating. No one told me about it. I never heard the term until I was an adult. And also, the only books that I was able to find in which kids were going through things like I was when I was Will's age, going through this sort of stuff, they only showed people and only showed girls, young girls, already entrenched in the most extreme versions of these issues and these conditions. And I thought we really needed a book, and that's a lot of what compelled me to write this book, that showed how one can reach that extreme state and what it looks like to get there. The sort of slow, gradual, bit-by-bit builds from something seemingly not harmless, but, not quote-unquote that big of a deal. Someone saying a simple word, a mean word about a kid, how that could then lead to something so severe. So I wanted to paint that picture. It was really important to me to put out in the world a version of that story. A lot of times you hear authors talk about how they write and make the books that they needed and wanted as a kid. And this was the book I needed as a kid. If I had seen someone thinking the same sorts of ways that I thought and feeling the same sort of ways, and seen sort of where it could potentially lead, I think it would have changed my life profoundly and in profoundly positive ways. And so it was very important to me to show Will getting to that point, and how he got there from fourth grade to seventh grade. Importantly, though, I did not end the book there. I did not want to end Will's story there. And at the very end of this section, the last few pages of this chunk of the book, Will begins to emerge from this darkness. And visually, we see a couple lingering scribble knots, and he even starts to draw some more. And if you watched the previous videos, you'll see some visual riffs sort of starting to come back. So this U shape and this C shape, that's the beginning of Will's face. So he's drawing his face again, and his lumpy hair, sort of upside down W or this rounded M. But at the same time, you see that inverts, and it sort of turns into this more skull-like motif. This is how skulls are often drawn in the book. And then you also see that flipped on its side, it's looking sort of like that bird that was drawn earlier. So on this page, the last sort of page of this section, these doodles might not look like much at all, but they really are a summation of the book in a lot of ways visually. We have Will trying to figure himself out through drawing himself here. And we also see how these two things are sort of embedded within him. He's got this skull in him, this sort of darkness and this sort of stagnation and stillness. And then he's got this other thing. He's got this symbol of freedom and flight and joy and lightness and effervescence and song and poetry. That's often what birds can symbolize. And so all of that is contained within him. And this whole book, in a lot of ways, can be seen as this tug from these things on one side or another. This sort of tug of war, I guess, in which Will goes to war against his own body and his own self, and how he comes out on the other side. So that's how this section ends, and there'll be one more video after this, if you're watching them in order, about the last chunk of the book. If you're reading this book with the Global Read Aloud or just on your own, or as a classroom or in library, thank you. I hope you're enjoying it, and I hope this video, along with the others, has given some insight and information into the creation and thought behind it. And it's added sort of depth and richness and meaning to your reading experience and discussion and exploration of it. Thank you so much.